Hi everyone, it's Jerry. This is video 8 from the Beginner to Chess Master playlist, which is a progressive series of videos. And we're going to have a look at how to successfully promote a pawn and how to defend against an opponent trying to promote their pawn. Before I get into these details, there's an important term that I'd like to first share with you. It's opposition. Opposition in chess is a certain relationship between the kings, a certain positioning of the kings. In this position, it's white to move. If the king plays to f4, it's said that white has taken opposition. One way to view opposition in this particular case is that when you take opposition, you are taking away advancing squares from the enemy king. You're not allowing the enemy king to enter your position. To use a basketball analogy, this would be similar to boxing your opponent out. When you take opposition, you are essentially boxing your opponent out, not allowing them to enter your position. The main purpose of doing this, the main purpose of taking opposition in chess, is so that you can next enter your opponent's position. You can next outflank the enemy king. So with black being on move here, if he plays to e6, we can now move into the black position, we can move forward, make progress, we can outflank the enemy king in this case by playing king to g5. Similarly, if the king plays here, we can play king to e5. We're outflanking the enemy king. If the king goes straight back, we can once again take opposition, moving forward, making progress. Similar case like this, and he only had one other option. We would take opposition like so. Now, there are many different forms of opposition, but the only one we really need to be concerned with when it comes time to promote a pawn is this one right here, the one where we position our king such that both kings are now on the same file with exactly one square separating them. Now we'll see how this ties in soon enough, but first, let's have a look at some examples here. First, working with a rook pawn, let's see how we can try to successfully promote a pawn that's on a rook file, the A or H file. Unfortunately, we cannot. For as long as the defending side doesn't do anything crazy, like run away from this promotion square. If you're the defending side here and your opponent has a pawn that's on the rook file, all you need to do is go to the corner and stay near the corner, and it'll turn out to be a draw. Now let's see why this is the case. Doesn't matter how exactly white moves their king and pawn. With other file pawns, it will matter, as we will soon see, but there's just not going to be a way to successfully push through and promote this pawn. You'll notice after king here, it's white being on move. What can he do? If he plays here, it's stalemate, and if he moves anywhere else, it allows king takes pawn, and that's basically the end result when a player tries to promote a rook pawn. It'll end up in stalemate, or you're just going to win the pawn. Now, the ones that are a bit more involved are knight pawns, bishop pawns, center pawns. These pawns here, any pawns on these highlighted squares, you can push through and promote successfully, but you need to be a bit delicate about how exactly you move about your king and your pawn. The king, it's important to realize he's the leader of the game. He's the general of the game, the leader of the game. He should take a leader role when trying to promote the pawn, or in other words, he should be out in front of the pawn, and only then should the pawn follow. Now, why is this so important? Why is it important for the king to play this leader role? Well, let's suppose that he doesn't. Let's say that the pawn is the one who leads the way. Let's see now how we can successfully defend on the black side. This position will turn out to be a draw for as long as the defending side knows what he's doing. So what we do as the defending side here, we simply approach the pawn. We want to get right in front of the pawn, not allow this white king to get out in front of it. And eventually there's going to be this point here where when you're the defending side, you're going to need to retreat at some point. And when you need to retreat to a square that's on the same file as this pawn. So in this case right here, just play king b6. Everything is just following that one rule of thumb. You will have no issues in defending against an opponent trying to promote their pawn. If the king is not out in front of the pawn and you're forced to be retreating at some stage, retreat to a square that's on the same file as the pawn. After king b6, king c4, what does black do now? He takes opposition. If he's going somewhere else, like here, the white king is allowed to get out in front of this pawn. So black takes opposition, does not allow the white king to enter the black position. The pawn pushes. Black stays in front. Once again, he has to retreat at this point, retreating to a square on the same file as the pawn. King a7 takes opposition, and one last time he must retreat, and this is especially important right here. King to b8 is the only move that will draw the position. Going here or here will result in a loss. We'll have a look at that, but why is king to b8 the way to hold the draw in this position? Well, after king c6, yet again, black takes opposition. After check, king b8, what to do? King b6 is stalemate. Any other king move, king takes pawn, and this is a draw. If the king did not go to b8 here, if he goes to c8, this allows white to take opposition. Or if he went to a8, this allows white to go to a6. In both cases, what's going to happen is that the black king will not have that, he will not get stalemated. He'll have to come out here, and then you can move up and promote next, and mate will follow soon thereafter. So the main point here is that the pawn should not be the leader. If that is the case, get your king in front of the pawn. If you must retreat, retreat to a square that's on the same file as the pawn, and you'll be able to hold a draw. It'll end up being stalemate, or you'll end up winning the pawn. Okay? Now, let's see how we can successfully promote a pawn. Okay, we're going to still work here with this knight pawn, this b pawn. And we want the king to play this leader role. In fact, I'm going to give you a quick preview here. This is the ideal setup that we want. When we're working with a b pawn, this is where we want the positioning of our king and pawn. Just giving you a quick preview here. We want to establish our king on this square right here, or in other words, 2 squares from the promotion square, and we want the pawn right behind the king. If we're working with the c pawn, it would look like this: D, E, F, and G. Take note of these positions here. If you can get this position right here, it does not matter whose move it is. It does not matter where the enemy king is. You are the winning side. You will be able to win the position. Okay, now we're going to see that in action. Let's see how we can now successfully promote a knight pawn. We get our king out in front. We have taken opposition with this last move. After king to c6, we can look to do what next? We can look to outflank our opponent. King to a5 does just that. King c7, king b5. We're not taking opposition with this move, but in fact black on their next move is taking opposition, but that is okay. We do have a pawn that we could be moving. You'll notice after this last move, pawn to b4, it is as if we just moved our king to the b5 square and took opposition back. Okay, so what we're going to do next is outflank our opponent, and we've already done, we've already positioned our king exactly where we wanted him from the beginning, 2 squares away from that queening square. We next move our pawn right up behind our king, and what to do next? Well, the knight pawns, some of you may not know this. Some experienced players who may be watching this right now may not be aware of some little tricks involved with the knight pawns, the B and G pawns. When it comes to this position here, it may appear that you can go in either direction, go here, here, get out of the pawn's way, and then push. But the only one that will win is the one that moves, that has your king moving towards the edge. So this is the winning method, playing your king to a6. What you really want to do next is get to the a7 square so you can push 3 times and be defending the pawn on those three squares with your king. So for example, if king here or king here, you would play king a7 and then push through. The only way to stop white from playing here is king to a8. You push your pawn, push again, and eventually you're able to get to that square and successfully promote. Now, why do you have to be a little bit delicate when it comes time for the B or G pawns? Why is it so important you go in this direction and not over here? Well, now here's a clever way that you can try to hold a draw. If you're the defending side here, and your opponent has a knight pawn that they're trying to promote, if they play king here, this is a sneaky move. King a7, which is tempting white to do something that's quite popular, which is to push the pawn with check. However, this move here will now result in a draw. After king to a8, now what? If king here, this is stalemate. And if pawn push, king to b8, does this look familiar? After king b6, it's stalemate. Any other move allows king takes pawn. It's very important when you're working with knight pawns in particular, there is this stalemate resource that the defending side can have. It's important that if you are in this position right here where the kings are lined up and it's your turn to move, the king and pawn side turn to move, if you play here, this is not the winning way. You need to go to the edge of the board and only then push your pawn through. Okay? If it was the case in this position right here, if the black king was on this square, for example, let me just change the move order a little bit. Let's say after this move the king went to the corner, king played here. Suppose it got to this position and the king was on this square, we would simply play here, push with check, push with check, push with check, and actually there's a very quick mate. And if the king went in another direction, at this point right here, king c8, well, we would outflank our opponent, push 3 times, and you're just not stopping him. Okay? Now, let's have a look at one last example, working with a center pawn. This one right here. Once again, king should play the leadership role, the leader role, getting out in front of the pawn. This last move here is taking opposition. Taking opposition once more. We're looking to next outflank our opponent. We've done just that. Taking opposition. Outflanking, we've already established with the king movements alone. Sometimes this can happen where you just get your king right up to this ideal square, 2 squares away from that promotion square. We now push our pawn right up, and in this particular case, when you're working with the C, D, E, or F pawns, it will not matter in which direction you go with the king, so pick your favorite one. Here's sufficient. If the king plays here, you step up, and then you're ready to push through. And if you go here and the king plays here, once again you would go to this square right here and push through. And what else is there? After king here, the timing will be perfect. You push, push, and then you get your king here and finally promote. Now, what we just looked at is something that's very simplified, of course. The game of chess starts out, we can say, where both players have 39 points each. We have 8 pawns, that's 8 points. There's 4 minor pieces. Each side has 4 minor pieces, so that's another 12. The rooks are 10 in total, and the queen is 9. So we got 8, 12, 10, and 9, 39 points apiece. What we're looking at right here is an example of 1 point to 0 points. Now, there's an important strategy in chess that we can take away from knowing this ending, knowing this very simplified position, which is to say that if you're up material during the course of a game, if you're, let's say, up a pawn or 2, the good general principle is to make even exchanges, trade knight for knight, bishop for bishop, rook for rook, pawn for pawn, queen for queen. Keep narrowing it down, chipping away from this 39 to 39, let's say, ratio, and eventually, if you're getting down to a 1 point to 0 point, we know how to win this. So a general principle is that if you are, again, up material, feel free to make even exchanges because we are now tending towards this type of an ending, one where we are just up a pawn and we could push through successfully. And on the flip side of things, another strategy will be if you happen to be down material, if you're down a pawn or 2 or maybe even a piece, maybe you're no longer as welcome to even exchanges throughout the course of a game. So keep these ideas in mind, and I think it will be very useful in your game. It will most certainly be useful when playing the game. Okay? So that's all for this video. As always, I hope you got something out of it, and I will catch you in video 9. Take care.